Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Nosferatu from 2024. Nosferatu has been a dream project of director Robert Eggers for almost, it feels like, as long as I've heard of him as a director. And, apparently he did a play version of it in high school or something and became sort of obsessed. And if you know his material, it sounds like kind of a really rich idea to have him take on one of cinema's most famous vampires and probably one of the most iconic and influential films in all of cinema history. And have him take on, which started as a silent film from F.W. Murnau. And I know there's been a million different versions of that and Dracula and spin-offs and things like that. But most people look at it as like there's the F.W. Murnau one, there is a Werner Herzog one, and now this is Robert Eggers, which is American. I didn't check if he was American, but it feels like the big Hollywood one, even though I know Warner Brothers was involved in the Herzog one. But this feels more like the big Hollywood one. So I was excited. This is a big moment, I guess, for a director like Eggers. The whole idea of elevated horror coming to this level. If you're a dumbass who calls it elevated horror, I'm sure it's a big moment for you. But but for that whole genre of like A24 kind of art house horror kind of stuff, it did feel like that. And I've been anticipating this movie for a long time. Anytime I hear him talk about it, I found it really interesting. I think visually, this is a very interesting film. And there's certain images, like there's an image... I will be talking about plot details. If you know the story of Dracula, it's the story of Nosferatu. It's a really old story. I'm not going to give a spoiler warning because, I feel like you should know that. But if you don't, I guess it's like a slight spoiler warning for a thing that's over 100 years old. But I think when you're 100 years old, I can spoil you. You can spoil it all I want. Certain images, particularly like when Nosferatu sees the sun, which I was like, I'm going to see a flyer or an EP for a metal or punk band with this image on it, and it's gonna look amazing. I'm curious, like, what's this gonna say, like, the vampires kill cops punk band or something like that. But some of the imagery in here is absolutely amazing, and he's using the budget and his power to do something really interesting. And it's also interesting to see someone like Robert Eggers go from The Witch to being like a big auteur name director. Like, this is a big calling card moment, and to see him play with that and be able to do this imagery and do shadow play and like obviously do things he wants to do that might be a little odder visually and stuff like that, and it feels exciting. And like there are times I just want to look at these interesting images and like dive into them, and like I saw this at the best, like a really good theater actually, and like I was really in love with some of the imagery. But here's like the thing with this movie, and sort of what ruins it for me, and this might be it is the worst version of Nosferatu I've ever seen. Not to say it's a bad movie, but it's definitely the worst Nosferatu I've ever seen. But although that is like a hard thing to compete with, the problem with this movie is it wants to explain shit. And I do not want this movie to explain shit to me. I know the story of Nosferatu, maybe my bad for watching other Nosferatus before this, but when the plague happens and various things happen, nobody stops the movie and goes, it's a plague, let me explain plagues and shit. Like, I don't want that at all. Nosferatu is always visual, and like I know the first one was a silent film, and I get that his version, supposedly he said it's like if Merchant Ivory made a Hammer movie or some combination of the two. Frankly, I don't know why you would want a Merchant Ivory Hammer movie. That sounds like bullshit to me. I don't like that. Doesn't sound interesting. I guess he felt it was, but there's so many times where they're standing around and explaining what's going on, and that just feels like against the previous two versions of Nosferatu that like to do things visually. It felt like this is the dumbest normie Nosferatu I've ever seen, because most people will be like, well, I wish it had explained this more. Well, guess what? This movie does that a whole lot, to the point where like I would get really into the imagery, and like some of it is just so compelling and so interesting, and then they'd stop the movie to like have Nicholas Hoult be like, let me explain crap, and you're like, what the fuck, like, why did you put this in here? I actually do like Hammer, even like crappier Hammer and stuff like this, but they made a lot of movies and not a lot of them are classics. And like this is like Quartermain, early 60s Doctor Who, and I mean that not in a good way. This is bad. Like a lot of the decisions he made, and it's like, yeah, it's interesting to think, what if someone made a Nosferatu like this? But I don't want to like actually watch that or hear it or have a script made of that ever. Like that sounds like a neat idea in your head and something I would watch out of a curiosity. But for this to be the culmination of what Eggers has been like building towards, it is. I'm just kind of a little surprised because it feels very against the guy who made The Witch and The Lighthouse and The Northman, all that stuff. It just doesn't feel like this interesting weirdo director. And yes, this is his first real adaptation, and maybe that adaptation, and because I knew that well, feels very maybe showing how he adapts something versus doing something original is very different. But then he also does the dumb thing is like, this movie's way too long. Like Aaron Taylor Johnson's character and and his wife and his family, like that's never really been in the other Nosferatus. Like why they needed a backstory, I was like lost on the purpose of that. Like there are other decisions, like Willem Dafoe as basically the Van Helsing character. I actually really like that, even though he was explaining shit, which annoyed me. But it was like, you know what? Willem Dafoe's Van Helsing is really cool casting. There's a lot of great imagery with him. He seems to have a lot of fun with the role. Only guy who's played, I don't know of anyone who's been in one, like with Shadow of the Vampire, a sort of version of Nosferatu and be a different character in another one. I thought that was actually interesting. And there's great performance. Like Lily Rose Depp is the first time I've ever really loved her in anything. I know this is, a big thing to work with a different auteur after Yoga Hosers, but Lily Rose Depp plays the character of Ellen, and the previous person who played that role, Isabella Gianni, I felt like was sort of an influence on her, particularly like I would say like her role in Possession, which is obviously been like meme to death and everything, but she would like all her contortionist stuff and like the weird like sort of orgasmic stuff she's doing as a Nosferatu, like calling to her. It's really interesting. But the thing with that character is like they sort of explain like she can like basically she like has like some sort of power to like talk to the undead or spirits and stuff like that, which again like I do not know why I need that explained to me. Like I cannot understand why you would do that, but they do. Cool. Like even though I got that from the opening, like you very much told me that, and it's like I really don't like this movie has very little faith in you. Like it's interesting that Robert Eggers, you'd think he would do a very visual, very silent film to influence thing, and he does like, what if we did the mid 50s really British boring version? And you're like, I don't know what he's thinking, because like in some sense like particularly like when Lily Rose Depp's Ellen is like falling down, like some of these shots are so beautiful, but like from a story perspective, like having like, what if Nicholas Hoult and his buddies are trying to solve a mystery, and I'm like, I could give a fuck less about that. I get that you put Lily Rose Depp's character as Ellen is more of the forefront of the story. I actually like that. There's certain decisions I like a lot, but I still felt so compelled and kind of turned off. And then some of the shots would feel like they're trying to be like a painting or something, and felt very against Eggers' aesthetic. And I get when I heard the merchant everything, like I can see it, but like why? I just like, I don't know. I definitely think this is his worst movie. Seeing this a culmination to something that I was excited for, I'm sort of let down by, because it's just like, it feels like as much as Herzog honored what F.W. Murnau did, Eggers wanted to explain it. Like it felt like someone at a party who's really, or someone anyone who's like super into like a movie or a book, and they want to like overly explain it to you, and then you like actually read the book or watch the movie and you realize like the movie doesn't like do that, and you would have preferred to have just watched that. That's like, this movie does that a lot, and like I don't, and like why expand certain characters? Why do this? Like I didn't understand what the purpose is of this adaptation, other than like, well, what if there was a Nosferatu like this? I'm like, okay, but like why though? Like I don't get it. I just like, I don't get, I get the movie, like it wasn't super hard to understand or nothing, but like I do not get why do it the adaptation this way and what the purpose is, other than to show you know Nosferatu really well. Good for you. Bill Skarsgård as Nosferatu with the vampire with the mustache thing. A lot of people said it's not being marketed in the market. It's not being shown in marketing to do similar things to what Longlegs did, and that was so successful. So maybe I thought it was cool. I actually liked the vampire. I liked it was a different take on it. The mustache was, I thought, really neat. I think it was supposed to show he's outdated because he's a vampire. Like, I thought that was a cool, like, wouldn't a vampire, like, if you were a vampire, wouldn't you not dress like the current day? Like, I thought that was an interesting take. Like, you know, instead of like a generation before, it felt like he's from a foreign land and like a weird king from forever ago. Like, that's how Nosferatu should be. So like, and I didn't recognize Bill Skarsgård's voice. I actually was like, wait, is it him the whole time? This is, you know I saw him in like The Crow this year and other stuff, but like this was really like a really great performance he did in this. You know, he does do like a vampire voice and stuff, but like he's very good at it. Even like how they had Nosferatu like actually sort of leeching on people rather than like sucking their necks and stuff. That was gross as all hell, but like that feels like a really interesting way to take a vampire. Like, he definitely had interesting things to do with the design and the cinematography and stuff. I just wish he had thought about why he's adapting it this way and like what that has to say for Nosferatu now. And maybe he felt like, well, if I explain it better. Like, I don't think that's something, why would you want that? Like, that's the part I don't get about this adaptation. It's honestly like when they would explain stuff and then you'd have like, you know, one person, like these single shots were like like it felt very like staged kind of in certain places. It just made me like, I was kind of like, while I was watching it, felt like maybe I should just like go outside and like rethink about this. Like, I don't know, it made me want to leave the movie. Like, it's like, and I didn't hate it. I actually like certain shots like a lot, but like it extremely turned me off. I don't know. I think I probably overall think it's okay. I probably need to rewatch it again. Maybe it's my fault. You know, like I often say, like when I watch a bunch of these in a row, there's always one I'm like, most people would give more time to, and I'm not. But at the same time, it's like well, why? I don't want when he explained the plague, that was the point. It was like, why would I want that explained to me? Why would I want it this way? Whereas like things like Willem Dafoe as Van Helsing, the Van Helsing kind of character, it's not called that, but you know, it's like the role in the Dracula story. I thought was a really cool idea that he's like this occult guy, and like I actually really like that, and I like certain things about them doing the mystery at some point, but at a certain point you drop it and it feels mystical and weird and strange, and like it never felt like that. I know I've heard a lot of people proclaim like when Nicholas Hoult goes in the castle and it gets like dark, like to me it just looked like murky CGI. Like I wasn't really taken to a different world in that case. It just felt like it did feel much more trying to be a traditional horror movie, which maybe was what people like, but it's also like Nosferatu's like sort of a weird thing for German expressionism. But he definitely gave a unique take. I don't know if it's the unique take I thought it would be or hoped it would be. And I am sort of disappointed in it. I thought I would like it more. You know, this was the culmination of something, and it sort of sinks when you wait for one of these. And I found its ambition interesting. I thought its cinematography was very beautiful. I thought in a lot of places, like, to be honest, like what turned me off, I'd forget about. Because I'd be watching the movie and they'd have all this cool cinematography and neat vampire stuff. And I'd be like so compelled by that. And then when they'd stop at a room and be like, oh, we need to kill the vampire this way. No, we should do it that way. And I was like, oh, fuck, I forgot why I didn't like this movie. Jesus. Like, I get that there's those version of things. I get there's films like that. And like, that's fine. And I don't always hate things like that. But like, in comparison to the other Nosferatus, the other Nosferatu movies knew when to shut the fuck up. And this movie just wants to explain everything, and I just don't get why. I think Robert Eggers almost feels like he has to, but like making the most accessible Nosferatu, like did you want just Nosferatu to matter more to people, but you weren't, or you just wanted to have a big movie or something? Like I don't fully get why you'd want Nosferatu explained to you unless you're dumb or something. I'm hoping Robert Eggers goes more to like his earlier work and less like this. I like The Northman for what it was doing. It just felt weird that he made like sort of a mainstream thing. This feels like sort of worse in all the mainstream ways, whereas Northman I thought was kind of its own different thing. This feels like almost like seeing someone's style kind of fall in on itself and like not fully understanding what he's doing. It felt sometimes like Eggers like trying to do Eggers, but in a good way. But I think the script, which he also, he wrote this movie as well, just ultimately fails because this is, Dracula. A Dracula movie explains stuff. A Nosferatu movie should go on vibes and things like that. And I get like there was the previous ones he wanted to make something different. Congratulations, you made something different. I just don't think it was very good. So it's like you can make something different. You should artistically make something different. But I just think like the problem with the whole theory of it is that it felt very anti what Nosferatu is, and it also felt like against the better parts of his own style. It sort of felt like a failing of American storytelling, because you take something like Nosferatu and this is how you do it. It didn't feel like a success of, oh my god, Nosferatu's back and look what we did to it. It more just feels like, oh my god, this is Nosferatu now. And I totally get if you love certain images from it. I expect this to be on flyers and stuff for punk bands and rap albums and things like that, and totally justifiable. And I think some of the imagery in here is really striking. I just wish it understood why it wanted to explain stuff to me rather than show off it can explain stuff to me, because nobody likes to sit around and have something explained to you that you can see very obviously with your own two eyes, the way Nosferatu usually is intended. So if you've seen Nosferatu and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like.